Today, we're making soda-flavored kombucha. Presumably not a hot take for people who brew their own kombucha, but I find soda to be a little bit too sweet. Mountain Dew is probably not a fair example, but 77 grams of sugar is a bit insane to me. And for some of these, kind of like with Kool-Aid, the flavor can be a little bit one note. But also like with Kool-Aid, some of these flavors are very distinct and they're very difficult to replicate. Something like root beer we could make, and I do have the raw ingredients, perhaps for another show. But some of these like Pepsi or Coke, much more difficult to try and mimic and almost impossible to replicate accurately. But one way I think we can solve these problems is by putting them in kombucha. That will allow us to control the amount of sugar, to replicate the flavor, and also to add a little bit of depth in there as well. So for our flavors this week, I have got a Mountain Dew, a Pepsi, a root beer, what I thought was a regular Dr. Pepper, but is apparently a Dr. Pepper and cream soda, a Sprite, and an orange soda. And since they all have varying levels of sugar, I've debated for a while about how to approach my recipes. Because it comes a matter of, do they have more and less sugar simply for the sake of having more or less sugar? Or does their amount of sugar depend on how acidic they are? Mountain Dew had the highest level of sugar, while something like Dr. Pepper had the lowest. So if I used the same amount of soda in every bottle, I would hold true to what they intended, and we wouldn't have to risk throwing off that sweet-sour balance. Or do I instead hold true to how much sugar I want in the kombucha bottle, which is about 18 grams? And I think that's the way I'm going to go. These are all about 11 to 13% sugar, so they're not too far off, but that is an insane amount to have within here. Let's get started. This also, conveniently enough for me, is going to be the easiest thing I think we've ever made on this show. I will admit that if I do drink a soda, it is usually a root beer, and it is usually with barbecue. This does smell pretty good. And 150 grams is a lot more soda than I would have suspected. But now we're done. For our Pepsi and root beer, I'm adding 150 grams because they are 12% sugar. And that's what brings us to 18 grams total. This actually smells really good too. It just makes me think of a Coke flavored slushie. For Mountain Dew, we are at 13% sugar, so I'm only going to add 140 grams. These all smell so good. They all bring me back to childhood. They all make me so nostalgic. Sprite at 11% sugar was one of our lowest, so I'll have to add 160 grams to get to our proper level of sugar. This was the only soda that I actually had in the house. It does smell so refreshing. I feel like I can never escape orange soda. Kool-Aid had it. The beer kept tasting like it. Here it is again. It smells like fake orange. Dr. Pepper, I feel like I have no qualms against. I'm a little hesitant about a cream soda version, though. Just because there's so many recipes that we've tried where we added vanilla, and then it inadvertently makes it taste like cream soda. Kind of been an unwelcome addition most of the times we've encountered it. This is 11% sugar, so we've added 160 grams again. And I will say these are all quite a bit more than I would expect. But for only 18 grams of sugar, as opposed to 77, don't think we need to feel quite as bad about it. For our tea today, we've got an all-black blend. I think the flavors of the soda will be able to quite easily stand up to our kombucha. These we'll set aside for our next batch. I would say I don't think we're going to get carbonation off of this. I think it's going to be a little bit too much sugar for our yeast. So these were very fast to make, and they're going to be pretty fast to carbonate as well. I'm just going to let them go for 3 days at about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. That should hopefully cut down the sugar a little bit, and it should give us a little bit of funky yeast flavors. And the hopes are pretty high. I think we added enough so that the flavors are going to stand through very cleanly. So even without carbonation, I think I'm going to enjoy these. So I will see you then. All right, not to sound like I'm 13, but let's try 6 sodas in a row. We are starting with root beer. a kombucha flavor that I have gotten from the store multiple times, and I do find quite enjoyable. No carbonation. It smells exactly like root beer. It smells very strongly of root beer, I would say. But also not strongly enough. And it's not sweet enough. It's a little too sour. But this is already over 30% of the bottle's volume, so I'm not sure I would have wanted to go higher. I think if we just added a little bit of simple syrup on top of this, not much, like if we added 2 grams of added sugar, I think this would have made it a little bit more balanced. It's not unpleasant, it's just a little bit disappointing. On to the next. This is our Pepsi. It's got more carbonation, and it is the same level of sugar in the soda and the same volume in the kombucha. So I think it might be due to the caffeine content. The yeast in a SCOBY will eat both the caffeine and the tannins from the tea. And since Pepsi has more caffeine than a root beer would, I think that's why we see a little bit of carbonation there. Smells exactly like Pepsi. Now this is much more believable as a soda than the root beer was, but it is still a little bit too sour. And the root beer had a bit of kombucha aftertaste at the end. You could taste some of that apple cider. But this is just Pepsi all the way through. Very pleasant, but too acidic. I think we would definitely want to increase this by a couple grams of sugar. Not too sour to be a pleasant drink. It does make it pretty light and refreshing. It is such a strong Pepsi taste, though. It kind of reminds me of like a Pepsi or Coke slushy. Just that kind of like lingering, syrupy taste. Quite good overall. This is our orange soda, which has the same amount added as our Pepsi and root beer. As you can see, it's quite orange. Doesn't really taste like anything. It somehow buried the kombucha flavor while not providing anything of its own. It does smell kind of like an orange soda. It is more sour than sweet, but I don't think it tastes like anything at all. It tastes like a nothing flavorless soda. I think most of our mock beer recipes ended up tasting more like orange soda than this orange soda. Maybe orange soda fans will like it, but I find it hard to get myself in their mindset, so this is a pass for me. Up next is our Mountain Dew, which, because of its higher sugar content, we've added less of the soda in here. Hopefully not too little. Not to be funny, but it smells a little bit like my son's diaper. It doesn't smell like Mountain Dew, and it doesn't taste like Mountain Dew. And I'm wondering if I have my notes wrong, and this is a Sprite instead. Let me grab another bottle. That aforementioned son was waking up last time while I was taking my notes, so... I think I had it right. But they taste so similar that it's really hard to say. All of that Mountain Dew smell and that flavor is gone. This is sweeter. This is more acidic. They both have that lemon limey flavor that's kind of difficult to differentiate them. They're almost exactly the same color, same carbonation. Noticeably sweeter, a more pleasant aftertaste. Again, not to be funny, but it has like a urine-like smell to it. And it's more acidic, and there's not really a distinct flavor. I would have been surprised because I don't think a Sprite and Mountain Dew taste anything similar, but the Sprite is the clear winner because this is pretty gross, and just any nuance of flavor is gone. Kind of like the orange soda, it masked the kombucha flavor and then just didn't provide anything else. Maybe it's because this one is more sour, but it's definitely feels a lot lighter and a lot more refreshing. Mountain Dew is much worse. This Mountain Dew is my least favorite. And I'm surprised because it did smell really good going into the bottle. Maybe it's just because we added less of the soda that it's not standing out, but this is already candy sweet, so I don't think we should have added more than this. Also doesn't taste like Sprite, though. And finally, we have not just our Dr. Pepper, but our Dr. Pepper cream soda. Kind of like the Pepsi, there is more carbonation here. I wonder if it's just the darker sodas that something inside them the yeast was consuming. Smells like a Dr. Pepper. Tastes very strongly of a cream soda, but a better cream soda than the ones we've inadvertently made on this show. Very acidic, but not in a bad way. Kind of just in the way that soda is. It's nice, and I think it's accurate to this, but I think I would have rather had just a plain Dr. Pepper because plain Dr. Pepper would be better than a cream soda. With that said, though, this isn't bad. I think the Pepsi was the winner for me. It was almost there. Pepsi and the root beer were both pretty good. I think they were just a couple grams of sugar away from being better. And this would make it third, and the rest is kind of a loss. In fact, I think all these are kind of a loss. The Pepsi was fun, but for as much soda that went in, that flavor wasn't quite as strong as I had hoped. When we added just 45 grams of a beer, the whole kombucha tasted like beer. But at 150 grams, that's getting to be quite a bit. At that point, you could almost just drink the soda. Kind of fun as a one-off experiment, or if you want to give someone a cola-flavored kombucha, but overall, I think I'd give all of these a miss. And I was so sure this would work out. But at least we learned something from all this. So, until next time, this is Reckless Booch.